Hi everyone, I'm Brenda Cardinal of StampinTulip.StampinUp.net, and I want to thank you for joining us for October Stampin' Class by Mail featuring the Sweetest Time Bundle by Stampin' Up. I've teamed up with Gina Weiselman, another Stampin' Up demonstrator, to offer these monthly classes by mail. This month it's Gina's turn to show you how to make your cards, and next month it'll be my turn. Be sure to watch to the end of the video for a sneak peek of the cards I designed for November and for some bonuses for signing up for the class. Have fun making your cards. Here's Gina.
Hi everyone, I'm Gina Wieselman of MySweetPaper.com, and I can't wait to show you how to stamp and assemble your cards using Stampin' Up Sweetest Time suite. We'll be using the Sweetest Time stamp set, Heartwarming Hugs Designer Series paper, Wonderful Gems, Red Velvet Specialty paper, Real Red Braided Linen trim, and Mossy Meadow Diagonal Stripe ribbon. If you order a class by mail kit, you'll also receive some elements that are pre-die cut or punched for you from the Sweetest Borders dies, Lovely Labels Pick a Punch, and Everyday Label Punch. You'll want to make sure to get your supply items ready, including Real Red ink, crushed curry ink, Stampin' Seal adhesive, dimensionals or mini dimensionals, multi-purpose liquid glue, mini glue dots, bone folder, paper snips, foam mat, and an assortment of clear blocks. Please reach out to either Brenda or me if you need to order any supplies, or if you'd like to learn more about becoming a Stampin' Up demonstrator or hosting an event. Let's get started with our stamping. If you order the class by mail kit from either Brenda or me, everything that you need will come cut and scored, die cut, punched, right to your door. But if you're doing these cards on your own, I just really quickly want to show you the paper trimmer. So I have a piece of thick Whisper White cardstock here, and I just want to score and cut this to make a card base. So I'm going to bring it over to 4 1/4 inches and use the lighter gray scoring blade to just go back and forth a few times, and that'll give me a nice score line. And then to cut, this will actually make 2 card bases. I'll go to 5 1/2 inches, and now this time I will use the darker gray cutting blade. So definitely want to make sure to use the correct blade and score when I want to score with light gray, cut with dark gray. But something nice about the cutting blade is you just glide it along. There's no need to really press down or apply pressure to it. If you're cutting for yourself, feel free to pause here and prepare all of these pieces for our first card design. When I'm putting my cards together, the first thing I like to do is stamp. So I will get out my Real Red ink pad, and I'm going to start by stamping on this label, which is just Whisper White cardstock that I punched with the Lovely Labels Pick a Punch, and I use this more ornate option here. And I'm going to grab my Wishing You the Sweetest Season stamp, ink that up, and I love photopolymer stamps because I can see exactly where I'm going and get it in the middle. The only other stamping for this card is just on the inside of the card base. So I have my thick Whisper White card base here, and I'm just going to add some sweet treats inside. So I'll do a candy cane, and I'll add a couple of these as well. And this would be really fun to decorate your envelope too, if you want to stamp your envelope. That's all the stamping for this card, so I'm going to go ahead and start with my assembly. So I will grab my Stampin' Seal, and I'm actually going to build right onto this piece of Whisper White cardstock. So I'm going to be layering up on that. So to start with, I'm just going to put some adhesive on one side and line up. Ooh, don't drop it. It's hard to see on the white, so I'll pick pick it up and line up my designer series paper with one side. So get it right in that corner. And then if there's any extra, it looks like I have just the tiniest bit here. I will just trim that with my paper snips. Okay. And then for layering on this piece, again, I always err on the side of cutting these a little bit too long in your kits, so you can always trim. But there might be some kind of awkward chunks hanging off, and I'm going to just go ahead and trim those right away, just because you can't really tell what they are. So I'll trim those, and then I'm going to apply my Stampin' Seal right to the back of this. And I am being pretty generous, but I'm not super worried about getting it on every little detail either. And then I'm just going to come in and butt that right up against the designer series paper. Once again, I will just flip to the back and cut any excess. Next, I'm going to bring in my card base that I've already stamped, fold that in half, and use my bone folder for a nice crisp fold. And then I'm just going to use the Stampin' Seal on this piece that we've already put together and add that. So I'm aiming for the center here, so an equal border on all four of my sides. To add our greeting here, I'm going to use Stampin' Dimensionals. Oops. I'm using the regular full-size dimensionals. If you have the mini dimensionals, they would work just fine as well. It might just take a few more of them. So I'll add some of those, peel off the release paper, and then you can play around with where exactly you want this on the card. I like being able to see the top of that candy cane. So I will position it like that. And then the finishing touch to this card are these wonderful gems. So you can see in the sample I used one large and two small. And I like to use either a tweezer or my take your pick tool to pick these gems up. When I'm using the tweezer and I grasp, I slide it before picking it up, just so that the adhesive backing, which is already on the gems, doesn't peel off. So add a couple of those. And that is the end of this first design. And here are all the parts and pieces for our second card design. Once again, I'm going to start with stamping, again with the Real Red ink. First, I'm going to take this label that I punched using the Everyday Label Punch, and I will ink up my stamp that says "For You" with Christmas cheer. Once again, the beauty of photopolymer is I can see right where I need to go with that. And once again, the only other stamping in this card is just some decoration for the inside. So I'm going to use these little peppermint wheels again. If you had a green ink pad, perhaps in the Mossy Meadow color, it would also be really fun to stamp the holly leaves and berries that come as part of this stamp set as well. With all of the stamping done, we are on to assembly. So I'm going to just be using my Stampin' Seal, and I'm going to start by mounting the designer series paper onto this Pear Pizzazz piece of cardstock. And as I'm doing that, what I'm aiming for is equal borders on all sides and in between each different piece of designer series paper. So I find it helpful to have another one here just so that I can kind of see what I'm aiming for and adjust if needed. Okay. So I'll start with that one. And you can see on the back here, the fun reverse patterns. It was really hard for me to decide which patterns to display. So you could certainly use the reverse side if you like it better. Next, we're going to layer this onto our card base, which we've already stamped. So I will fold it in half, use my bone folder for a nice crisp crease. And then again, just using my Stampin' Seal adhesive. Ooh, it's very sticky, my finger's stuck. I will mount this piece. Okay. And while we have the Stampin' Seal out, I'm going to go ahead and adhere my leaves, my holly leaves right away. So I did a little bit on there, and then we'll take the smaller leaf and add that. And I'm just making sure as I put these on that the veining is in the same direction. Now the berries, I actually die cut out of the new red velvet paper, which once you touch it, you'll just absolutely love. And for these, I'm going to use a glue dot. So I'll pick up a glue dot and position that in the corner. And then to attach the real red braided trim, what I'm going to do is first attach it to the back of the greeting and then attach that whole assembly onto the card front. Now I played around with this a couple times. What I'm going to do is just fold it into approximately thirds, and then I give it a little twist in the middle so it becomes almost a figure 8. And that's what I want to go on the back. Now, I often will use dimensionals to just attach the ribbon to the back of something like this, but I found that the ribbon or the braided trim was bulky enough that the dimensionals were becoming lopsided and it didn't work as well. So I am actually just going to use a little strip of good old Scotch tape here and just put that right in the middle. It looks like I made it a little bit too long, so I will trim. And there are certainly Stampin' Up! Adhesives that I could use, but I have this on hand. It's easy, so I figure why not. And then to attach this piece to my card front, I'm going to use my mini dimensionals. And the reason that I'm choosing the mini dimensionals here is because I want them to fit between the ribbon. I don't want them to be going on top of this trim because I just feel like that will add some dimension to something that's already sticking up, and I would just prefer not to do that. So I'll peel off the release papers and then position this on the card. I'm not trying to center this perfectly by any means. I do want it to be straight, but otherwise, as long as it's kind of in that corner where those designer series paper pieces are meeting, I am happy with how that looks. And here are all of the parts and pieces for our third fun fold card design. Once again, we're going to start with stamping, and I will start with the real red. So for this card, there are 2 pieces of Whisper White cardstock, and the direction they're facing does matter. There's only 1/4 inch difference, but you'll want to make sure that in lining it up on your card, it's oriented so that it's slightly longer or wider than it is tall. So once you've made sure that the orientation is correct, we'll take the real red, and I'm going to start with the all is calm, all is bright greeting at the bottom of 1. And then on this same piece, I'm going to use the candles. Now this stamp is very saturated in ink, so I want to place this on my foam mat, and I'm going to get it nice and inky. Just want to make sure I get a full transfer. Okay. It looks like there's one place. Okay, there was one little spot that didn't want to ink up evenly for me, but I think I have it now. And so for this, I want to make sure that I'm leaving enough room for the candles at the top, or the flames at the top. So that's what I'm going for. Now I'm pressing firmly with pressure, but I am not rocking at all. And that worked pretty well. That's all I need for the foam mat. But with this other piece, I'm just going to stamp my inside greeting, the bright and peaceful wishes to you this Christmas. And then for the flames, we have this little piece, and I'll be using my crushed curry ink. You could certainly use a different color of yellow if you wanted, but I am just going to add that in, leaving a little bit of space between the top of the candle and the flame, so that it looks like there's a little bit of wick there. And I will say, the stamp set comes with 3 different flame pieces. They looked so similar in size and shape to me that I decided to just use one. If you wanted to use all 3, you certainly could do that. That's all the stamping, so we're going to start our assembly, and I'm going to start by building up the front of the card. So I'll just use my Stampin' Seal. And mount this piece to my mossy meadow. And then when I bring in the card base, now you'll notice that there are 2 score lines on this base, and we're going to fold it in half along the first score line and use the bone folder. And then we're going to fold it back along the second. And this is creating our fun fold where we'll actually be opening up the card. To keep this secure, I'm going to add my Stampin' Seal to that 1-inch strip in the middle. And I'm being quite generous because I really want this to be stuck down. Okay. Then what I'll do is add my Stampin' Seal to the back of my Mossy Meadow assembly. Oops. Got a little bit on here, so I want to get that off before I contaminate anything with adhesive. And now for this, I'm centering it on the side of that score line. So aiming for equal borders on the 3 sides and then up to the score line. And while I am assembling, I will go ahead and add the center greeting. And there's a bit wider border here since it doesn't have that Mossy Meadow plating to it. I just didn't want to design with 2 different sizes of Whisper White because I certainly would stamp the wrong one for the inside and the wrong one for the outside. Now the last few elements for this card are decorative. So you received with your kit a bunch of the holly leaves. And with this, what I kind of tried to do is put them together in clusters. So I'm going to use my adhesive and just start layering these on. And the reason that I'm trying to kind of cluster these together or match them up is so that there's kind of a vertex where I can put the berry accent. Now for adding these little pine boughs, the Stampin' Seal is not going to be the ideal adhesive for this, so I'm going to use my liquid multi-purpose glue. And I'm not worried about getting it on every little piece. I just want to make sure that I have some of the ends with adhesive. If I can pick it up, there we go. And maybe I'll put this one over here. This time I might try not setting it down since I had such a hard time getting it back up. But you can see I'm using like the tiniest amount of this adhesive. Oops. Press it down firmly, and that adhesive will start to set pretty quickly. So it'll slide around for a little bit, but then pretty soon it will start to set. And the other touch here are two more of these wonderful gems. And I'm using the large ones here. I'm just gonna put one each at those kind of central points where all those leaves and pine boughs are coming together. And the very last touch, of course, is the ribbon right along this fun fold portion of the card. So you have the diagonal stripe Mossy Meadow ribbon. And it does look slightly different on the front and back. One of the sides has a little bit more white to it. So I'm going to put that on the inside because I prefer this side with more green. And I'm going to tie half of a knot. And then for doing a knot like this rather than a bow, I'm going to loop around and through. And I find that if I pull on only one of the tails, rather than pulling both of them, it leaves a prettier knot at the top for me. So I'll take my scissors and just trim a little bit. And you can adjust where that sits. If you want to secure that at all, you are certainly welcome to grab a glue dot. I might just use either my tweezer or my take your pick tool, put it on the back of that knot and press that in place. And I have some additional samples to share with you, also using the Sweetest Time suite of products. This first one is very similar in layout to the fun fold. It features the candles in the middle and the holly and berries at the bottom, kind of as a border, but I completely changed up the color scheme here. I was inspired by the Night of Navy and Copper color on the Brightly Gleaming Designer Series paper, which was actually in the holiday catalog last year and carried over into this year's catalog as well, which was super exciting. So I used my Versamark ink pad and copper embossing powder to make to stamp the candles, the flames, the berries, as well as my inside greeting here. And I just think this is so elegant. Another sample using the candles. So for this card, I used the Sweetest Borders dies, and I cut 2 different colors, the Pear Pizzazz and the Mossy Meadow of the same pattern, and then I punched out the negative of the Pear Pizzazz and filled it in to this design, filling in the Mossy Meadow. So it was pretty easy to do. Some of these small pieces were a little finicky with all of the gluing, but I love the color contrast that it has. And here's what that die looks like. So you can see it's really nice because it has these horizontal guidelines so that you can make sure it's going straight across your paper. So I just used this twice on the 2 different colors of cardstock for that card. Another fun fold design here. This one opens up like this. And for this one, I featured again the holly and berries and used that leaf stamp to create this patterned background. This next design brings in still the designer series paper, which is great. This label is using the Tasteful labels dies. And then the red element here is using the wrapped in texture embossing folder, which actually it comes as a set of 2. And I love how they're just nicely textured to give a little bit of dimension and depth to the card without distracting from the main elements. And then I was inspired by the focal piece of this card to make a nice little gift tag. So very similar design, a different label, but again featuring that red velvet paper and the holly leaves, and then our braided trim in the real red color. And I just think this would be so much fun to put on top of a Christmas gift. Thanks for participating in this month's Stampin' Class by Mail. And here's Brenda with a few more things.
Thanks for showing us how to make those beautiful Christmas cards, Gina. If you ordered a class kit by mail from either Gina or me, be sure to follow the link in the email that shared this video with you for a specially curated Pinterest page that Gina and I put together with even more fun ideas of how to use your Sweetest Time bundle. November is my turn to design and share the cards with you, and I'm excited to show you a sneak peek of the card designs featuring the Snowflake Splendor Suite of Products by Stampin' Up. This suite can be found in the August to December 2020 mini catalog. The class includes all the supplies you need to make 3 each of the 3 card designs, including envelopes. And in November, we have a fun fold card for you. All you need to do is add the stamp set, inks, and adhesives. From the Snowflake Splendor suite, we'll be using the Snowflake Wishes stamp set, the Snowflake Splendor Designer Series paper, the Balmy Blue Glimmer paper, the blue adhesive back gems, and the 1/4-inch Snowflake Splendor ribbon. Also from the mini catalog, we'll be using the Snowflake adhesive backed embellishments. We'll be using some elements that have been punched, embossed, and pre-cut for you if you order a class kit from either Gina or me. These elements include things from the Lovely Labels Pick-a-Punch, the Winter Snow embossing folder, the So Many Snowflake dies, the Layering Circles dies, and the Stitched Shapes dies. Our ink colors are Misty Moonlight and Pacific Point, and the adhesives we'll be using include Stampin' Seal, Mini Glue Dots, Stampin' Dimensionals, and multi-purpose liquid glue. I'll also show you how to prep your card base for our fun fold card using Stampin' Up's paper trimmer. The deadline to register for this class is November 5th, 2020. We have a special bonus deadline of October 27th, 2020. If you register by this date, you'll receive 2 completed cards with envelopes with your November class kit. We also have some bonuses if you find new friends to take our Stampin' Class by mail. So make sure to check your email or contact either Gina or me to learn more. If you're not already on one of our email lists, please reach out to either of us to learn more about this and other fun stamping opportunities with Stampin' Up. As always, we appreciate any feedback you have about our class. Until next month, happy stamping!